In this bass lesson, you're going to learn 5 shredding bass lines. Hi, I'm Luke from Become a Bassist, and if you want to learn some really impressive fast bass lines, then check this one out. Alright, this is going to be a ton of fun. We're going to get to play some fast stuff and some trickier stuff. But before we get started, there's one thing I really need to emphasize. If there's one rule for playing fast or shredding, it's that you need to be able to play things nice and cleanly at a slow tempo before playing it at a faster tempo. If you can't play it slowly and cleanly with solid technique, then you'll just be BSing your way through when you try and ramp up the speed. That's why we'll be using a metronome or a drum machine for every bass line we'll be talking about in this lesson. It'll keep you honest and probably be super frustrating, but it is well worth it in the end. Another quick note before we start, you'll notice that almost all these bass lines use some kind of distortion or at least a bit of grit in their sound. Now this does thin it out a little bit, but it also makes each individual note much easier to hear when they're going past very quickly. Of course, you don't need to have it, but it does help in making everything you're doing nice and clear for the people in the audience. Let's dive in though. We'll start off in the shallower, easy end of the shredding pool with a Metallica song, For Whom the Bell Tolls. Now this is the perfect intro to what some people call lead bass. It's from bass player Cliff Burton, so grab your bass, your effect pedal, let's get started, and this is how it's going to sound with our drum track. So maybe not the shreddiest line in the whole world, but it is a good starting point. So in the original recording, you've got the guitars kind of going like this. Yeah, playing power chords. And then Cliff Burton comes soaring in over the top with a little bit of drive, a little bit of grit in his sound, coming down chromatically from this high D up here on the 19th fret to the 15th fret. Yep, just down chromatically. Now from there, we go to the D string, 17th fret to the 16th. So we got 17th to the 16th, and then back up to that high D note on the 19th fret of the G string. So we've got a bit of a jump there, but we get an even bigger jump right after, so I've just gone. So we're actually going to jump a whole octave now from this high D to the D an octave below on the 17th fret of the A string right there. And then to finish off, we come to rest on the 16th fret of the A string right there. So the whole thing. And if you want to get a little bit fancy, you can throw in some kind of bends and like vibrato and things like that. That kind of stuff, it's fun. If you've been playing for any length of time, you probably won't struggle with this particular line, at least not with the speed. It's not super fast and should be very, very manageable for you. Next, let's check out a bass line from Tool's Justin Chancellor. Schism is probably one of his most famous bass lines, and this one is a little bit tricky, not especially because it's fast, but because it's in alternating bars of 5 and 7. It adds up to kind of 1 bar of 12, which is relatively common, but there's nothing common about this bass line. It also relies heavily on hammer-ons, which can be a little bit tricky to nail and play them perfectly in time, but here's how it's going to sound. Yeah? Now at a slower tempo it'll sound more like this. Yeah? Now, if you listen to the drum track we've got here, you'll listen to the hi-hat, the open hi-hat sound, the psh. It happens on the downbeat of every bar. Yeah, so at beat 1 of every bar, you hear the psh on the open hi-hat. Yeah, now like I said, we've got a kind of like a compound bar, a bar of 5 followed by a bar of 7. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, over and over and over and over again. Now the actual notes of the bass line go like this. We start off with an open D and immediately hammer on the 10th fret and the 12th fret, the C and D of the D string. Just like that, yeah? Now when we go up, then we go up to the F on this G string, the 10th fret right there. And by the way, every time we play this F, it should line up with that open hi-hat in our practice track. Those are on, like I said, the beat ones of every bar. Now, nearly after every note, we're going to go back down to this open D string. We'll do it after this F, and we'll play an E right then, 9th fret on the G string, and once again go back to that low D. So far we have this. This is kind of like the first half of the line. The second half is very similar and starts the exact same way, with an open D hammering to the C and D on the D string. We even have the same F and E, followed by the open D strings in the second half. Hear how they're very similar? They're not similar, they're exactly the same. But when we get to the E though, instead of ending the phrase and starting again, we're going to add one more note. This G, the G on the 12th fret up here. And then plus one more D string before we repeat everything again. So our second half sounds like this. Yeah? And once more up to speed, it's going to sound like this. Yeah? Of course, there is more to this song, but the chorus is pretty similar, and if you can nail this part, there's nothing stopping you from taking on the whole song. Just make sure you nail those hammer-ons nice and tight, you'll be golden. Next though, let's move on to our next line, a shredding flea bass line from the Red Hot Chili Peppers song, Around the World. Now the shredding part of this line is in the intro of the song, but it does come up later as well. This is one where we really start to speed up both hands, and this will definitely be one to practice slowly and accurately before cranking up the speed. It'll look like this. That's if we're kind of skipping the low E's at the very start and just going straight to the kind of meat of the line. But at a slower tempo, it's going to sound like this. You could also play it down lower as well. Pick up. That'd work just as well. I've put both versions in the tab and notation file that you can get from the link in the description of this video, but for now let's just focus on the one that Flea actually plays kind of up here, around the 12th, 14th fret mark. So we'll be starting with a 3-note pattern that repeats 3 times. It starts off with a D, 12th fret on the D string, hammering onto the E, 14th fret on the D string, and then plucking that E again. And then you do that 3 times. So pluck, hammer, pluck, pluck, hammer, pluck. Yeah? 1, 2, 3. And after that, we go from the D to the E again, but no doubling the E this time. Now we just come down the E blues scale until we get to the G, 10th fret on the A string. 3. Just like that, right? That's the first half of the line. The second half is also very similar to the first half. We still get the 3-note cell rather, 3 times. But after we get that, we're just going to go down the E blues scale again, but all the way to the D on the E string, the 10th fret. So we're going to get, yeah? Just like that, yeah? We're going down a bit further for this one. That means the second half sounds like this. Just like that. And if you play the whole thing up to speed again, it's going to sound like this. Yeah, just like that. Honestly, the original of this one, there's a little bit of slop in there. It's not the tightest line in the world, but it makes up for it with sheer energy and drive. So you could be forgiven for not kind of nailing this one 100%. For our next two lines though, that's not an option. Our next line comes from Chris Wolstenholme, the bass player from British band Muse, and we'll be looking at the song Hysteria. Check it out. Yeah, that's the kind of basic idea. More slowly, it's going to sound like this. Pardon me. Now this one is a real workout for the right hand. Yeah, everything is plucked, the tempo is fast, and it's a pretty unrelenting line. Now it's made up of three similar but very distinct ideas. There's one on the A string, one on the E string, and one on the D string. So let's go through in order. The one that starts on the A string starts with 2 strikes of the open A, and then straight up to the G, 5th fret on your D string, and then immediately back down to the open A. Next we go back up to our G, then up to the octave A, 7th fret on the D string, and then once again, immediately down to the open A. We get this a lot, returning back to the open strings. So far so good, right? After this, we get our G again, followed by our low A, then an E, 2nd fret on the D string, have to shift out of position for this one, and then again back to our low A. Yeah? Then we get a bit of a break from always hitting that low A. We get this. 2 Fs, 3rd fret, down to the E, then down to our open D, and then back up to our E on the 2nd fret. So the whole first phrase is this. Just like that. Our second phrase starts the exact same way, this time on the E string though. See how it's the same pattern, just starting on the E? Now where it changes though is right after that part. So instead of going down after this, we'll stay in the same position. We'll actually go up to our G on the, actually you can do this a couple of ways. You can go up to the G on the D string, then back to your low E. Or you can go, either works fine. I kind of tend to favor this one. Because it keeps everything on adjacent strings, makes it maybe a little bit easier. Yeah? So we get, and then we get this kind of little flourish at the end of the phrase, just like we did with the first one, except this time it looks like this. We get 2 Gs, then down to the E, then back up to the G, and finally up to that A right there. So the whole second phrase is this. Just like that. Our next phrase starts off the same way, but on the D string. Check it out. It's exactly the same as our first 2 phrases, just starting on the D. The second part that changes though is really, really cool. We do this little first bit, and then when we get to the C for the 4th time, we do this kind of descending chromatic thing. We play the C, go down 1 fret to the B, then our low D, and then we repeat this idea starting on the B. So for B down to the B flat, and then how cool is this? B flat to the A. So we get this kind of chromatic descending thing on the G string. Just like that, yeah? And after this, we go straight back to the first phrase, and this final A in the third phrase, it kind of replaces one of the A hits that we'd normally expect in the first phrase. So it kind of crosses over the bar line a little bit. So the whole bass line up to speed sounds like this. Pardon me. Yeah. Now, if you're practicing this one and you're finding it's a bit hard, try not playing all the open strings and just playing the higher notes. That'd look like this. You go 1, 2, 3, 4. This is like the hidden melody of the bass line. If you can nail this part, then it's just a matter of adding in those open strings and just getting it up to speed. All right, let's get to our very last one. And this one is YYZ, YYZ, however you want to say it, from Rush. Now this is probably the trickiest of all the lines we're talking about in this video, because Geddy Lee is kind of all over the shop in this track in the best possible way. Now for us right now, we'll just be focusing on the main line after the crazy intro, and that sounds like this. My bad. Yeah, that's the part we'll be focusing on for now, that kind of first melodic idea. You'll notice that it's basically the same thing, just in two different positions. If you learn the first half, you've almost learned the second half. So let's just jump right in. First of all, metronome or drum machine is super important for this line. Get it right with good technique, nice and relaxed, at a slow tempo before you try and ramp it up. I've only got the kind of drum track set at about 90% of the original recording because I'm still working on this one myself. It's definitely not perfect, but it's a work in progress. Yeah? So we start with this. 2 A's, 2nd fret on the G string, and then down to our F sharp, 4th fret on the D string, before jumping immediately back up to the A and then back down to our F sharp. Yeah, just like that. That's our first little part. Then from this F sharp, we're going to go chromatically down 2 frets. So from the F sharp to the F natural and then the E, and then we'll end the first part of this phrase on the C sharp, the 4th fret of the A string. Now the second half of this phrase is almost the same with a little bit added at the very end. So instead of having this little chromatic bit on the D string, we move that chromatic bit to the A string, and instead of stopping on the C sharp, we're going to pass through the C, down to the B, 2nd fret on the A string, yo-yo back up to the C sharp before landing on our low F sharp, 2nd fret on the E string. Yeah, so the second half of the phrase will sound like this. Yeah, hear how we're extending the phrase just a little bit at the end there? Next we play nearly the exact same thing, but up 3 frets. That means we'll start on the 5th fret of our G string, our C right there. Yeah, the first 3 quarters is exactly the same, but when we get to that last little bit, we get this. It starts off the same as our first part of the phrase, with that chromatic bit happening on the D string. And then we land on this E on the A string, and then we bounce a little bit between the G on the D string and the E on the A string. We get 2 of the Gs, and then an E, then the same thing with a slightly different rhythm. And then when we land on that last E, we slide all the way down and play our first phrase again. So the whole thing will sound like this. At a bit of faster tempo. Pardon me. little bit, slide. And that's how you get between the two different phrases. Obviously there's a lot more to the song than just this, but I guess you could call this the melody of the song. It's super, super iconic. If you listen to some live versions of Rush playing this, especially later on in the career, the song isn't exactly like this. The phrasing is slightly different, and they actually play it a lot of times a little bit slower than the original recording. But if you want to try playing along with some of those versions, all the notes are the same. You just have to focus on changing up the rhythm just a tiny little bit. If you'd like the tabs and notation for all of these tracks, as well as the practice tracks that I've been using in this lesson, then I've made them available to you for free on becomeabassist.com. If you click the link in the description, sign up on that page, I'll send you the PDF with all the bass lines in there so you can get started shredding today if you want to. And of course, like I said, I've included the practice tracks so you can start a bit slower and then work up from there. It's 100% free and 100% fun. To recap though, you learned 5 shredding bass lines. We started off with a sort of introduction to lead bass with Metallica's For Whom the Bell Tolls. Then we moved on to Tool's Schism. Then we checked out the Red Hot Chili Peppers' Around the World. Then Muse's Hysteria, and finally YYZ from Rush. Please remember that when you go through these lines, use a metronome or a drum track. Start slowly and only increase the speed when you're 100% comfortable and confident with the line at the slower tempo. Thanks for watching. This has been a ton of fun for me, and I hope you got a lot out of it as well. Make sure and grab the tabs and notation if you want to from the site so you can start playing these lines today. But I'm Luke McIntosh from Become a Bassist, and I'll catch you really soon.